Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gitte Mary and this is a continuation of a tiny series. I don't know. I made a video a while back called The Most Sustainable Materials where I sort of reviewed the most sustainable materials. And obviously we need to do the same with the most unsustainable materials. And that's what we're doing today. But before we get started, this video has a sponsor. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, my favorite online learning community. They have thousands of different courses and I've used Skillshare for so many different things. I've used Skillshare for productivity courses, for different lifestyle courses, cooking, sewing, DIYing. Today I want to highlight a course that fits perfectly well into what we're going to talk about today, and it's a quilting course. So one of the things I'm going to say many times in this video is that don't throw away clothes that have small breaks in them or things that you can't wear. Find ways to upcycle them, and quilting is an amazing way of doing that. I have very limited experience with things DIY related when it comes to textile, fabrics, etc. But I really want to get better at it, and this is such a cool and inspirational course. If you want to learn this craft as well, check out the link, it's down below, and it's for beginners. Perfect. Also, the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description or the code Gitte Mary Johansson will get a 3-month trial of Skillshare. Pretty cool. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now let's talk about the most unsustainable fabrics. First of all, and this can come as a shock to absolutely nobody, but polyester is kind of bad, guys. Polyester is made from crude oil, which means it does not break down, ever. And when we wear it and wash it, it releases microplastic. A wash load of polyester or other synthetic types of clothing can release up to 700,000 pieces of microplastic in one wash load. Today, polyester is widely used in the fashion industry. It is one of the most utilized materials after cotton, and that's because it's pretty cheap to produce. So it's a kind of key component if you're producing a lot of stuff, for instance, fast fashion, and you want to keep the prices down. But there's definitely a lot of downsides to this material. Starting off with the fact that it's derived from a fossil material. That is unideal. It's also really hard to repair, and its recycling abilities are kind of limited. It does not break down organically, it cannot be composted, and it also releases microplastic. That being said, polyester is not necessarily or inherently more unsustainable than natural fibers. Some life cycle analysis studies actually find that polyester is better for the environment than cotton when looking at certain parameters. Other studies find that they are basically equal, but that they are bad at different things. And some studies also find that it is significantly worse than cotton. It ultimately depends on how we're using this material, how long we're using it for, how we're maintaining it. The way we treat our clothing can affect the environmental impact of that piece of clothing drastically. My best advice for wearing polyester, and yes, I think you should wear it. If you already have these things in your wardrobe, I don't think it's a sustainable choice to throw them all away or donate them. I think you should get as much use out of them as possible. However, there are ways of maintaining them or ways of wearing them that's more sustainable. For instance, being mindful of how many times you wash these products. So stuff like underwear made from polyester, while it's not an ideal way to make underwear either, like your body doesn't breathe, it's not the best. But underwear you have to sort of wash after one use, but things like leggings, shirts, skirts, dresses, etc. don't need to be washed after every use, and that's a way of reducing microplastic from getting into our water systems. You can also wash your synthetic clothing, and that is polyester and many other types of synthetics as well, but wash them in a filtration bag like a Gopi Friend. It's not an ideal solution, but it definitely helps. And if the clothes breaks or becomes unfit to wear, find ways of upcycling those materials. I usually stuff those materials into pillow fillings. But again, quilting is more fun. Next up, we have acrylic. So acrylic is also a synthetic material, and it poses a lot of the same issues as polyester. Acrylic is made from a synthetic polymer, and the production of acrylic is really harmful both to the environment and to the people that work with the material, because it's incredibly toxic and it uses a lot of very toxic chemicals in its production. And that impacts workers' health because there's usually very few safety regulations in place to make sure that these people are protected. And also, the wastewater from these factories are washed straight into our water systems. Acrylic also releases microplastic. Some studies find that between 20 to 35% of ocean microplastic comes from synthetic textiles, like acrylic, like polyester. And most studies place the breakdown time of synthetic fibers in landfills to be between 20 to 200 years, depending on the conditions. Now, nylon. This is also a synthetic material and it poses the same issues as polyester and acrylic. It does not break down, it releases microplastic, it's based on crude oil, and it's basically impossible to repair. I do wear secondhand nylon stockings. I haven't found a sustainable alternative to the nylon material, but there are different brands that do better things with nylon and that use recycled nylon and that have repair programs and take back programs for nylon stockings when they break, like Swedish stockings. Swedish stockings accept broken or ripped nylon stockings and then they recycle them, which is pretty cool. You can also upcycle them in your home. Again, I use mine as pillow stuffings, but you can also cut them and use them as elastic bands. Now, you didn't think I was going to make a video about the most unsustainable fabrics without also talking about conventional cotton. Let's go. Cotton is the most cultivated non-food crop in the world. And boy, does it have an impact. I've actually made an entire impact video about cotton, so if you want to know more, there's an entire video, but here are some of the highlights. It takes almost 3,000 liters of water to produce one cotton t-shirt, and the amount of water it takes to produce cotton on the global scale that we're doing now actually has some pretty devastating environmental effects. Loss of water in areas that are highly cultivated with cotton is a really big issue. For instance, the Aral Sea, which was once the 4th largest lake in the world, but because of cotton production, it is now completely vanished. And while only 2.4% of the world's arable land is used to make cotton, it uses about 25% of the world's insecticides and 18% of the world's pesticides. Organic cotton, recycled cotton are definitely better options, but also simply just being mindful with how much we consume is by far the best we can do. That means only buying what we need, repairing things when they break, and maintaining them so they last longer. Now I want to talk about rayon/viscose. I've mentioned this material in some other videos as well. I like to categorize it as a semi-synthetic, because it's technically made from plants, but it goes through such vast chemical processing that it doesn't really have anything to do with a plant-based material anymore. And just because something is made from plants doesn't necessarily make it sustainable either. Rayon and viscose is made by processing cellulose from plant-based sources in a chemical solution and then spinning that into fabric. And that process is highly damaging to the environment, or at least it can be, and it often is. We're talking wastewater filled with toxic chemicals flushed directly into people's drinking water, no safety regulations for workers who are working with these chemicals, and no regard for where the wastewater ends up. Rayon/viscose is a good example of how something is often advertised as being more sustainable because it's plant-based, when in fact it doesn't really have anything to do with its own plant-based source. Another example here is bamboo textile. I'm talking about that in the other video as one of the ambiguous ones because it's often advertised as a really sustainable material, but there is a lot of gray areas when it comes to both viscose, rayon, bamboo, etc. Semi-synthetics, the lack of transparency in these supply chains is astonishing. But I also want to talk about an ambiguous material in this video, and that is leather. I've actually talked about leather quite a few times. I have a blog post about how and why I, as a vegan, still wear leather products, and you can find that down below. That's not going to be about, I mean, like, it is going to be about this, but like, I will leave more resources down below. Down below you can of course also find the sources for this video, as always. Leather is an ambiguous material because while it can be used sustainably, its production definitely isn't. In the Textile Exchange report, it is estimated that about 1.4 billion skins and hides were produced in 2021 as part of the global leather production. That is one animal for 5 people. Overall, the production of leather has a high impact because ultimately it's related to an industry that is responsible for deforestation, massive amounts of greenhouse gas emissions, loss of water systems, loss of biodiversity, and soil erosion, and just so much more. I do have an entire impact video about animal agriculture and specifically factory farming if you want to check out more about the impact. I think it's important to note that in many cases leather is a byproduct from factory farming because the main product is meat and dairy and then the skins are a byproduct, but that's not always the case. There are also instances where the leathers and the skins and the hides are the primary product. It happens especially for luxury goods. In order to preserve leather so it can be used for many, many years, it's tanned, and the tanning process is where a lot of the impact lies as well. The majority of leather today is still tanned using chromium, which is a highly toxic known carcinogen, really dangerous to both the environment and people that work with the material. Leather, in fact, often has the highest impact of eutrophication because its wastewater flows untreated into water systems. And tannery workers, and in many cases children as well, especially when Western brands outsource into sweatshops as young as 10 years old, are facing serious health problems because of the tanning process. However, when the leather is produced and we disregard the entire impact of how it got there, it's one of the most durable materials we have. That's why ethically I don't have a problem with wearing secondhand leather, vintage leather, reclaimed leather, etc. It will stick around for a long time, it is extremely durable, and it does not release microplastic when you use it. And in comparison, some alternatives to leather, not all, but definitely some, are petroleum based and not at all good for the environment whatsoever. That doesn't mean that the process of leather cannot be improved. It can, and it definitely should. But using older leather products is definitely a sustainable choice. And those were the most unsustainable materials, and one ambiguous one. I hope that you liked this video. If you did, leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you want more fabric impact related videos, if there's anything you're wondering about, or something you want me to do a video on. I would love to hear you guys out. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. And remember to click the links down below and check out what they have. Everything, basically. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day, and I will see you guys next time. Take really good care of yourselves. Until then. Bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green, zero waste content, and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!